Good day. Welcome to this week's thrilling instalment in the 100 Greatest Artists of All Time. And we're on to DA. I'm not a massive Bowie freak, but you can't keep him out of the top 100 artists of all time. David Bowie. He didn't start life as David Bowie though. He started life as David Robert Jones. He was born in London, Brixton, 1947, and his musical career began at primary school, where he played in a skiffle group with his classmates. He went to the same primary school at the same time as Peter Frampton, and Peter's dad was a music teacher there. He played also at secondary school, but he left school altogether at 15 and went into music straight away. He played in a succession of blues rock bands, none of which took off, not even when he played alongside the likes of Tony Hatch, the up-and-coming songwriter and TV theme composer. In 1967, he went solo and had to change his name because at that time the Monkees were bursting on the scene and their lead singer was called David Jones too. So David Jones, the English variety, became David Bowie, and he released his first album called David Bowie in 1967. The next few years included a period where he learnt how to dance. He had a stint in a folk trio. He had a stint as a mime artist where he supported his friend Mark Bolan and T-Rex, who were on the way up themselves. Then, out of the blue, on the 11th of July 1969, he released his first classic record, Space Oddity, mere days before the launch of Apollo 11. It made number 5. However, that wasn't the start of his career, really, because that album had no standout songs, and he faded back into obscurity. Looked like a one-hit wonder for the next 4 years. The third record he did was called Man Who Sold the World, and to emulate his mate Mark Bolan, he actually hired a band and made it a bit rockier. We know what the title track in particular is a well-known song now, been covered by such varied acts as Lulu, who had a hit with it, and Nirvana, who didn't. But it wasn't an immediate success in 1970. Hunky Dory, one of the classic Bowie albums, wasn't an immediate success in 1971, despite including Life on Mars and Queen Bitch. But Hunky Dory was his first great album and would be discovered by the world soon enough. The breakthrough was the 1972 classic album, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. One of the great albums of all time. The first single, Starman, charted at number 10, the album at number 5. Not massively high, you might think, but it stayed in the charts a long time. I was a second year at grammar school at the time, and it was probably the biggest news in our class at the time. All of a sudden, people couldn't get enough of Bowie, and they began to buy his old records. Hunky Dory, which was only 6 months old, suddenly became a hit too. A lot of his old singles were released and became hits. For Christ's sake, the goddamn awful The Laughing Gnome was a hit. We've already mentioned that on the back of this Bowie's success, Lulu had a hit with Man Who Sold the World. And he was so hot, was Bowie round about now, that he was Another song from Monkey Dory, All the Young Dudes, was given to Mott the Hoople and became the first hit for Mott the Hoople, the song which broke Mott the Hoople as a successful artist. He was always in the news, he was headline news. It was a big thing in 1972 to admit you were gay, and Bowie was the first person I can ever remember coming out and saying he was gay. It added to his mystique. The ironic thing is, I'm not quite sure how gay he ever was, really. I think he was bisexual because he's been married twice and both times have been to women. Go figure. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It was nonetheless a prolific period in which he also found time to help other people with their records. He co-produced Lou Reed's classic album Transformer, the one with Walk on the Wild Side and Satellite of Love, and he also worked with Iggy Pop and the Stooges, and he released his own next album in 1973, Aladdin Sane, his first number one album, and it had 2 top 5 singles in Driving Saturday and Jean Genie. But 1973 was also, sadly, the year he announced Ziggy's retirement live on stage. It created a persona around Ziggy Stardust and he retired this character. His fans wept, but I think it was all just marketing, really. It wasn't too long before he made another new rock record anyway. In 1973 he did Pin-Ups, which was a covers album. Admittedly, it was just cover versions. It was number one nonetheless. But in 1974 it was a bona fide album of new rock songs, Diamond Dogs, another number one. Then he changed direction, and if I'm absolutely honest, Bowie's golden era for me ended with Diamond Dogs, and that was his last album, which I really liked, because he'd been rock, glam rock up to that stage. Young Americans in 75, total change in direction. He attempted soul. And for most people, he attempted soul very well. The lead single from Young Americans, Fame, was his first big hit in America, number one. And in the UK, this was a time when Space Oddity was re-released and became his first UK number one, 6 years after it had originally been released. Station to Station saw him experimenting with synthesizers. It was funkier and more rewarding. It's a good album, Station to Station. Not as good as Ziggy, but a good album. Then he went to Berlin, where he recorded over a fertile creative period, Low and Heroes, both in 1977. Low tapped into the fashionable krautrock sound of the likes of Kraftwerk. Side 1 was a good album. Side 2 was pretentious twaddle. Heroes was more conventional, and the title track is probably radio's most popular Bowie song to this day, even on Planet Rock, even though it's not really a rock song. It is amazing to me that actually, guess how high Heroes charted when it was released? Your 5 seconds are over. 24. It only reached 24 in the charts. Go figure. The Lodger, the last of the Berlin trilogy, was recorded in Switzerland, actually in New York. Wasn't as good as the other two, nor as successful. Scary Monster and Super Creeps was a partial return to the rockier sounds he had made in the early 70s, and included Ashes to Ashes, a belated follow-up to Space Oddity, and, like Space Oddity, a number one, his second number one. Then he did a collaboration with Queen, David Bowie combined. Yes, guaranteed number one, Under Pressure. In 1983, he collaborated with Nile Rodgers of Chic, and that's when he came up with Let's Dance, the title track of the album. The title track of Let's Dance, the album, was number one. if you like that, if you like disco, it was a great track. It is a good track, even to me, who's more a rock fan. The other two singles, Modern Love and China Girl, both made number 2. His final number 1 was Dancing in the Street, a duet he did with Mick Jagger for Live Aid, a cover of an old Motown song. Then he more or less went into retirement. Between 2003 and 2013, he didn't release any records. His last live show was 2004. But he did have a resurgence in his final years. When he released an album called The Next Day in 2013, it was received orgasmically by the music press. To me, if I'm honest, I think it was a little bit of The Emperor's New Clothes. I think he got good reviews because it was by Bowie. But nonetheless, on the back of it, he became the oldest ever recipient of a Brit Award. Black Star in 2016 was even more highly praised. Full disclosure, I still don't understand what all the fuss was about, but the very fact he was able to record a long-playing record is to be much admired, because what we didn't know is that while recording it, he had terminal liver cancer, which the public hadn't been told about. The album was released on his 69th birthday, and he died 2 days later. The next day, more people watched his music online than had ever watched anybody in a single day. 19 of his albums suddenly reappeared in the top 100 charts, and Black Star itself was number 1. He was the second best-selling artist of 2016. Over his career, he sold over 100 million records. In 2002, a BBC poll ranked him the 29th greatest Briton of all time. Not the 29th greatest musician of all time, the 29th greatest Briton of all time. And in 2013, a History magazine special declared him the best dressed Briton in history. Sickening news for Beau Brummel and Guy Fawkes. See you next week. Bye.